Well, good morning and welcome to my channel. I am Crystal and this is Homemaking on the Homestead. And today we are going to talk about how to be more efficient in the kitchen so it will ultimately save you time and save you money. For most of my life, my adult life, I have cooked from scratch. That doesn't mean that I haven't bought my share of convenience foods over the years or done takeout or whatever, grabbed something at the deli, but the majority of all my cooking is from scratch. And you know, when you cook a lot from scratch, it takes time, especially if you have a family. I raised 8 children and still cooked everything from scratch, and I learned a lot on how to not be constantly living in my kitchen and cooking. I think time spent in the kitchen is very valuable. It's a wonderful thing to be able to know how to cook and how to make your own food. In the long run, it can save you so much money, and you have the blessing of being able to give homemade, healthy, home-cooked food to your family, and that is super important. But there are ways that we can learn how to be more efficient when we're in the kitchen. And when we're more efficient in the kitchen, that gives us time to do other things in life. And know that we are going to be well prepared. We're going to have dinner ready that night. We've got things planned out, all that good stuff. So let me give you some tips today on how to be more efficient with your time in the kitchen. All right, everybody knows menu planning, and I've talked about this a lot. Menu planning can look very different to different people. It can mean different things to people. The whole concept behind menu planning is so that you are prepared, that you are ready to go for the week, and you know what you're feeding your family or your husband or yourself. You know what is going to be served, what you need to have on hand. So meal planning for me has looked very different. I used to do extensive meal plans because, like I said, I had 8 kids. So, you know, I would be doing the breakfast, the lunch, the dinner. And does every meal plan always work out just like you planned it? No. And that's okay. There's that sense of knowing to be flexible with your menu planning, but to the best of your ability to be able to think down the road for the week and know pretty much what your plan is. Nowadays that it's just my husband and I, here is what my method usually is. I pick out 2 to 3 meals that we are going to eat that week. I then plan to serve those meals for at least 2 nights. Sometimes the leftovers will spill over, or there's just enough and we didn't mind it, and we might eat it a 3rd night. Usually by the end of the week, I am serving up all the leftovers anyway, or I am taking whatever I have left and turning it into something different, like, you know, a pot of soup from the leftover rice and the leftover pot roast that week, or, you know, whatever it might be. So that is one way for me to know exactly what's coming up in the week. Now when I go into the kitchen, let's say that I am planning to make some sort of chicken casserole, and I am planning on making a pan of enchiladas. So when I go into the kitchen to start working, what I can do is I can get my Instant Pot going with the chicken for that week, and I can cook up all the hamburger that I need for the enchiladas, and I can get all my meat cooked at one time. Since I'm in the kitchen and I'm already doing things, it really doesn't take that much extra time to be able to cook a little bit more food. So now when I go to assemble those meals later in the week, I have my meat already cooked. Super easy, and that can help me a lot. And basically that's the same concept behind batch cooking. Batch cooking is when you decide you're going to cook something up that is in bigger portions than what you might normally cook. I did some batch cooking with meatballs. So I used my own meatloaf recipe for this. And instead of turning it into meatloaf, I just went ahead and made it into meatballs. Then I cooked them all up. I put them in the freezer. I saved some aside for that night's dinner. I took the rest of them, put them on a tray, and put them in the freezer so that they would all freeze individually. I used 3 pounds of meat when I did this. That's way more meat than my husband and I are going to eat in a meal. And quite honestly, that can be stretched out for us to be several meals. So the first night I turned it into teriyaki meatballs. I made some teriyaki sauce, and we had that with rice. We ate that for 2 nights. Now the rest of the meatballs, after they were frozen, went into a Ziploc bag that I marked with the date and what it was, and I put it back into the freezer. So this is an example of batch cooking. Another way that I have done batch cooking before is I will cook a large portion of, let's say, pork. I had at one time, I had several pork sirloin roasts in the freezer, so I cooked up about 4 or 5 pounds of that in my Instant Pot. And then I shredded up all the meat when it was done, put it into a container, aluminum. I had an aluminum pan, but you could use whatever you have. And then I planned all my meals for that week based on that meat. So, you know, we had the barbecued pork sandwiches, I did pork fried rice, I did, you know, other pork meals that finished off that meat. So that was how I took advantage of batch cooking. Now, that means that on that night that you want to serve that meal, you don't have to start way at the beginning with, okay, let me get my meat cooked, because you already did that. That saves you time, and then it will save you more time when you are cooking and prepping that meal. Now, here's another trick that I like with batch cooking, because we tend to think of it in terms of cooking your meat, or maybe cooking up your portions of rice for the week, or maybe cooking up a large portion of beans and freezing those in individual containers for future meals. But here is another way that you can batch cook, or you can be prepared ahead of time. I was in the grocery store and they had peppers on sale at really good prices, better than I had seen in quite a long time. So I grabbed a red one, a yellow one, an orange one. Unfortunately, they were out of green ones, or I would have grabbed one of those too. And I took those home, I washed them up, I chopped them up. I chopped up about 4 or 5 onions. I had a batch of a stalk, I don't know what you call it, of green onions, but I got those all chopped up, and I mixed all of that together in a bowl, and then I put it into freezer Ziploc bags. I did it fairly thin so that I filled the bag maybe a third full or so, got all the air out, and then I laid it flat so that I could just stick it in my freezer flat. Now all you have to do is go to the freezer, pull out your bag. You can just break off from that bag the amount that you want, pop it into your pan with your oil so that they can cook, and put the bag back in the freezer. This will also save you a lot of time. And for the money saving aspect, it was a great opportunity for me to take advantage of my peppers that were on sale. Oftentimes I will cook up a meal size that is much bigger than I know that we are going to eat. I did that last night. I made some chicken bacon spaghetti last night, and I filled up my 4-quart pot with chicken bacon spaghetti, and let me tell you, we're not going to eat that, in any time quickly. So we had it for dinner last night. We will be having it for dinner again tonight, and the rest of it I put into a Ziploc bag. I marked that, and I put it into the freezer. The other foods that I like to batch cook and have in my freezer are breakfast foods, and there's a lot of reasons for this. I am not a huge big breakfast eater, and my husband is. He loves his breakfast, so I have the choice. Either every day I can make breakfast for him and then, do the cooking, do the cleanup, do all of that, or I can have things in the freezer, and he's quite self-sufficient, so it's very easy for him to be able to pull out what he wants out of the freezer from a variety of things that I have. Some of the things that I like to batch cook and put in my freezer, which you've probably seen in some of my other videos if you've been watching my channel for a while, but I like to do breakfast burritos. Those are a big one. He loves breakfast burritos. I also make waffles. Those are also very good. I have a little tiny Dash waffle maker that makes these wonderful 4-inch waffles that fit perfectly in the toaster. So that makes a super easy, quick breakfast for him. And in the past, I have also done breakfast sandwiches. English muffins, an egg, a piece of sausage, a piece of cheese. I wrap those up in usually plastic wrap, and put them in the freezer. If you are cooking from scratch, regardless, you're going to be spending time in the kitchen. So the idea is to consolidate your time as much as possible and do as much as you can each week. And the best way to do that is to pick a day, pick an afternoon, whatever works for you, and do your meal prep. Learn how to multitask. Learn how to put all those kitchen gadgets to work. You know, have things going in the Instant Pot, have things going in the oven, have things going on the top of the stove. And if you learn to multitask like that, it really does help. The other thing I do when I plan my menu out is I usually plan to bake at least a couple things that week. It might be a couple loaves of bread. It might be muffins. It might be, banana bread. It might be something, cookies, some sort of treat for the week. It might be brownies or something like that. And so I will usually try to set aside an afternoon and just take care of all my baking. Now we've got our bread, we've got our dinner rolls, we've got our brownies, we have our cookies, or whatever it is I have on my list. I've got it all done, and it will last us for the entire week. Another thing that can actually save you a good amount of money is to have a list of go-to recipes. Meals that are very easy to put together. You know that they are enjoyed by your family. And just make sure that you have all the ingredients that you need for them on your shelf, in your freezer, and you can quickly throw that meal together. To me, a great example of that is like spaghetti. Spaghetti's a great go-to meal. Because it's so quick and easy, and it's so easy to have everything you need on the shelf. The main idea with that is some weeks life just happens and the menu just didn't work out. Things didn't go the way that you had planned, and now here you are with no dinner for tonight. And what do? The go-to meals. That's what you do. So you grab that list, and you know that within 30 minutes you've got dinner on the table. Those are great meals to have, and make sure that your pantry is always stocked with what you need so that those go-to meals will prevent you from heading out for takeout. And also don't forget, if your menu planning did not work that week, that is the value of having those meals in the freezer. So, don't get discouraged by that. Just grab one of those meals out of the freezer that you put in there from making extra or batch cooking or whatever, and you've got dinner with no problem. I think the other thing to remember to be more efficient in your kitchen is to simplify the foods that you eat. If you have a huge variety of foods, or you feel like you need to eat something different every single night, it might be good to reevaluate that, because oftentimes that creates more stress, it creates more work, and it really isn't necessary. I've always tried to hone in on just basic food items, because if you have basic foods that are in your pantries and in your freezer, it is so easy at that point to create a huge variety of meals from something very simple. But you need to streamline that. You need to know what that is that you enjoy. What is it that your family eats most often? And remember that variety oftentimes isn't the spice of life. Variety can be expensive, and it can be kind of stressful to, think, oh, I've got to create something new every night. Now what I would love to know from you is some of your time-saving tips, some of the things you do to make your time in the kitchen more efficient. And let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you and see and talk about different things. I'm sure I've missed a lot. But for now, that is today's video on how to be more efficient in your kitchen, and I hope you found some helpful tips there that will make you think about saving some time while you're in the kitchen, but yet still being able to cook from scratch and create frugal meals and home-cooked meals for your family. All right, I will see you all in my next video. Bye-bye.